Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something that, well, shapes pretty much every interaction we have, intent. We'll be exploring, what it means for us as humans, and also how artificial intelligence is starting to get its head around this crucial piece of the puzzle.
That's right. We've really immersed ourselves in some fascinating material, especially drawing from Unraveling Human Intent with AI to try and bring you a clear, insightful understanding.
Yeah, our mission for you listening is to really grasp the complexities here, both human and artificial intent, and sort of where they meet.
Exactly, without getting bogged down, hopefully.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Human understanding of intent. It just feels so innate, doesn't it?
It does.
But when you start looking closely, it's surprisingly layered. Our sources point out that this ability, understanding what someone else is aiming for, it's really fundamental to how we function.
And what's really fascinating here is that, at its core, understanding intent is about what psychologists call theory of mind.
Theory of mind, right.
Yeah, our ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, desires, feelings, both to ourselves and, crucially, to others.
And it's that skill that lets us navigate social stuff, figure out what people might do, cooperate.
Precisely. And it develops over time, right? That's not something we're just born with fully formed.
No, the sources describe it as this really gradual process in childhood. It seems like even from around, 15 months, babies start mimicking actions.
Yeah, nonverbal imitation. And then by about age 2, they start connecting desires and emotions, like understanding someone is sad because they didn't get what they wanted.
Then around 3, they start using words.
Mental state terms, yeah, like think or want or know.
But the really big turning point, according to the material, is around 4 or 5, understanding false beliefs.
Ah, yes, the classic false belief task. Understanding that someone can believe something that isn't actually true, that's a huge cognitive leap.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Our material draws this parallel between a child struggling with false beliefs and the trouble AI has with things like sarcasm or irony.
That's a brilliant connection. It really highlights the challenge.
It's that ability to grasp a state of mind that doesn't actually match reality.
Exactly. If an AI can't represent that someone might hold an incorrect belief, how can it possibly interpret intentions based on those beliefs?
Yep.
Or understand language that plays on that gap, like you said, sarcasm?
So advances in AI reasoning, sort of what-if thinking, could be massive here.
Definitely a big step forward if they can crack that.
Now, while most of us adults develop this theory of mind, our sources are clear that the journey isn't identical for everyone.
No, there are factors that influence it. Language skills are a big one.
And executive functions, like managing your thoughts.
Yes, things like planning, inhibiting impulses, mental flexibility, and even how much parents talk about feelings and mental states seems to play a role.
Interesting. Siblings, pretend play, even reading stories.
All these things can help scaffold that development. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, a well-developed theory of mind, well, it pays off.
How so?
It's linked to better communication, obviously,
Yeah.
smoother conflict resolution,
Right.
more imaginative playing kids, which is important, and just generally greater social competence. You're better equipped to navigate the social world.
And we don't just download someone's intent, do we? We're constantly picking up cues.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We rely heavily on observable stuff,
Yeah.
facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, posture,
Our brains are just constantly processing these signals.
trying to make inferences, yeah. For instance, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala. It's heavily involved in processing emotional signals, which are often tied to intent.
But it's not foolproof.
Not at all. That's crucial. We misread cues all the time. A misinterpreted glance, a tone taken the wrong way, it can lead to completely misunderstanding someone's intent.
Which kind of leads us into a more philosophical angle. The sources bring up intentionality.
Yes, intentionality with a T.
And it's not just about meaning to do something, is it? It's deeper.
It's more about the aboutness or directedness of the mind. How our mental states, thoughts, beliefs, desires are always directed towards or about something.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, think about it. Your fear is always of something. Your hope is for something. Your belief is about something. This directedness is seen by many philosophers going way back as a key feature of consciousness itself.
Right. Makes sense. And where there's intent, well, the huge question of free will isn't far behind, is it?
Never is. Our sources definitely touch on this massive, long-standing debate. Are our intentions truly ours, freely chosen?
Or are they just the result of everything that came before, cause and effect?
Exactly. That's the crux of it. And this link between intent and free will is absolutely central to how we think about moral responsibility.
Yeah, because typically we only hold people accountable for actions they freely intended to do, right?
That's the traditional view, yes. From medieval thinkers grappling with sin and will, right up to modern existentialists emphasizing choice and responsibility.
So this idea of free will, it's been a cornerstone for ages. In ethics, in law.
Absolutely fundamental. It's a huge topic we could spend days on.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But sticking to the brain for a moment, neuroscience is starting to map this stuff out, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We're beginning to understand the neural processes behind intentions. And there seems to be a distinction neurologically.
Between what?
Between the sort of immediate urge to move, sometimes called action intention, and our more overarching goals or plans, the aim intention.
Okay, so like the action intention is reaching out your hand.
And the aim intention is to pick up that cup of coffee.
Got it. And then there's the mirror neuron system. That always fascinated me.
Yes, mirror neurons. The idea that certain brain areas activate both when we perform an action and when we simply watch someone else perform the same action.
It sounds like a built-in mechanism for understanding others' immediate action intentions. Like, they're reaching for the cup.
That's one prominent theory, yes. It's thought to play a key role in imitation, empathy, and understanding simple goal-directed actions.
But our brains also need to know the difference between my intention and your intention, right?
Crucially, yes. And research suggests specific brain regions are involved in this self-other distinction regarding intentions. Places like the parietal lobe, the insula.
Okay.
And then for our more complex social intentions, those intentions, we want to achieve this together. Different areas seem to come online, like parts of the prefrontal cortex.
It's pretty amazing that neuroscience is even getting close to tracking our conscious awareness of intending to do something.
It is. And some studies, as the sources mentioned, show brain activity related to an intention before the person is consciously aware of having made the decision.
Whoa. That really throws a wrench into the simple idea of free will, doesn't it?
It certainly complicates the picture, raises profound questions about where our decisions truly originate.
And thinking bigger picture, evolutionarily speaking, this whole ability to understand intent, it must have been a massive advantage.
Oh, undoubtedly. For social creatures like us, being able to anticipate what others might do, what they want, it's critical for cooperation, competition, avoiding danger, finding mates.
Everything, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Our material even mentions how behavioral genetics can help us understand how these social cognitive abilities might have evolved over time. Those better at reading intentions likely had a survival and reproductive edge.
Makes total sense. But okay, while our biology gives us the hardware, maybe, the way we actually use it, interpret intent, value it, that's not universal, is it?
Not at all. Culture and history play a massive role here. This is a really important point our sources emphasize. Cultural relativism, meaning beliefs, behaviors, and, yes, intentions need to be understood within their specific cultural context. You can't just apply one standard everywhere.
So the stories a culture tells, it's history that shapes how people understand intent.
Absolutely. Cultural narratives, religious beliefs, legal systems, social norms, they all contribute to a society's shared understanding of what intentions matter, how they should be judged, what counts as a good or bad intention.
And culture itself is described as this kind of invented knowledge, shared ideas, social constructions.
Exactly. Concepts like money, marriage, government, they exist because we collectively intend them to exist and act accordingly. This shared or collective intentionality is fundamental to building societies.
And this cultural lens leads to real differences in judging intentions.
Yes, significant differences, especially in moral contexts. Our material highlights cross-cultural variations. For instance, some cultures might place more weight on the outcome of an action than the actor's intent when assigning blame.
Whereas Western legal systems often put huge emphasis on mens resition, the guilty mind, the intention.
Precisely. Though there's also this idea of the contextual variability view, suggesting maybe it's not that intent doesn't matter in some cultures, but that its importance shifts more depending on the specific situation being judged. Different cultures might just focus on different contexts.
That's a crucial nuance, especially when we think about AI interacting across cultures.
Huge implications.
Yeah.
An AI trained on one set of cultural assumptions about intent could make serious errors or even cause harm in another context.
And even within, say, Western thought, the concept of intent itself has evolved over history.
Definitely. From ancient Stoics focusing on controlling desires, to Buddhist emphasis on mental states, to later Enlightenment focus on reason and will, and then modern existentialism highlighting individual choice and responsibility.
It's not a static idea.
Not at all. It shows that what we mean by intent and why it matters has been constantly debated and reinterpreted throughout human history.
Okay, wow. That's a really rich picture of human intent. So, let's switch gears completely. How on earth is artificial intelligence trying to grapple with this? How does AI attempt to decode what we intend?
Right, this is where the technology side gets fascinating. And AI intent recognition has come a long way.
I bet. Where did it start?
Well, the very early systems were quite basic. Think rule-based patterns, keyword matching.
Like those old customer service bots that just look for words like refund or problem.
Exactly like that. Very brittle. Then came machine learning approaches, using algorithms like support vector machines or random forests to learn patterns from labeled data.
A bit more sophisticated.
A bit, yes. They could generalize better than simple rules, but the real leap, as you hinted earlier, came with deep learning.
Neural networks and all that?
Yes. Models like convolutional neural networks, CNNs, recurrent neural networks, LSTMs, and especially now transformers. They can process vast amounts of data, text, speech, images, even movement patterns, and learn incredibly complex representations.
So they don't need explicit rules as much.
Much less so. They can automatically extract relevant features, leading to significant performance boosts in understanding language and context. And another growing area is human-AI teaming.
Where people and AI work together on it.
Exactly. Humans providing feedback, guidance, domain expertise to help the AI refine its understanding of intent in specific situations.
Okay, so what are some of the main methods AI uses to try and figure out our intentions? The sources outlined a few.
Yeah, one fundamental task is intent classification or intent detection. Basically, the AI tries to assign a user's utterance or action to one of a predefined set of intentions.
Like in a voice assistant, play music, set timer, what's the weather? Those are predefined intents.
Precisely. And modern language models like BERT or specialized architectures like Diet are very good at this, understanding the nuances of how we phrase things.
But what about when someone says something unexpected, an intent the AI hasn't been specifically trained on?
That's the challenge of intent discovery. It's much harder. The goal isn't just to classify known intents, but to recognize when something new comes up, something outside its known categories.
Open world intent detection, they call it.
Yes, or few-shot intent discovery. And this is where large language models, LLMs like GPT-4, are showing promise. They might be able to generalize from just a few examples of a new intent, or even use their broad knowledge to infer related intents.
So they could potentially learn on the fly.
That's the hope. Using LLMs for things like topic modeling on conversations to spot emerging intents, or even generating synthetic training data to help models learn faster.
Okay, that's clever. And then there's effective computing reading emotions. How does that link to intent?
Well, emotions are often strong indicators of underlying intentions or desires. If someone sounds angry, their intent might be confrontational. If they sound happy, maybe cooperative.
So AI tries to read faces, voices.
Facial expressions, vocal tone and pitch, sentiment analysis of text, even body language or physiological signals like heart rate in some contexts. Emotion AI tries to capture these signals.
Useful in customer service, maybe. Gauging satisfaction.
That's a big application area, yes. Or in educational software, seeing if a student is frustrated or engaged. But it's also ethically complex.
I can imagine. What about physical interactions, like robots working with people?
Right. In human-robot interaction, HRI, predicting intent from motion is crucial. If a robot is handing you something, it needs to anticipate where your hand will be.
So it analyzes movement.
Exactly, using models like hidden Markov models or deep learning on motion trajectories to predict the goal of an action before it's completed, for safety and smooth collaboration.
The sources also mention probabilistic models. That sounds mathematical.
It is. Things like Bayesian inference, Markov decision processes, MDPs, inverse reinforcement learning, IRL. These approaches try to model the internal mental state of a person, their likely goals, beliefs, values, and calculate the probability of different intentions given their observable actions.
So it's like the AI is making educated guesses based on a model of human decision-making.
In a sense, yes. There's even something called the Intention-Driven Dynamics Model, IDDM, trying to capture this.
And logic plays a role too, not just pattern matching.
There are efforts there, yes. using formal logic, like first-order logic, to represent knowledge about intentions and reasons. Or neurosymbolic AI, which tries to combine deep learning's pattern recognition with symbolic reasoning's explicit logic.
Like IBM's project debater, trying to understand arguments.
That's an example of aiming for deeper understanding. Frameworks like ROME, or the Predictive Mathematical Intention Framework, try to bring more structure and logic to intent recognition, even in specialized domains like math problem solving.
And finally, causal AI. You mentioned this briefly, moving beyond just correlation.
Right. This is a really important frontier. Instead of just noticing that X often happens before Y, causal AI tries to understand if X causes Y. Applied to intent, it's about understanding the underlying reasons why someone has a particular intention.
That sounds much closer to how humans think.
It is. It could lead to much more robust and reliable intent inference, less likely to be fooled by superficial correlations. But it's hard dealing with uncertainty, scaling it up, avoiding bias. These are big challenges. Social continual learning frameworks are also exploring how AI can learn causality in social contexts.
Okay, that's a lot of different approaches. It all sounds incredibly powerful, but also complex.
Yeah.
And maybe fragile.
That's a good way to put it. Which brings us squarely to the ethical considerations.
Yes, this can't be straightforward.
Far from it. One massive issue is algorithmic bias.
How so?
If the data used to train these AI models reflects existing societal biases, say, biases about how different genders, races, or socioeconomic groups typically act or intend to be, the AI will learn and potentially amplify those biases.
So the AI might systematically misinterpret the intentions of certain groups.
Exactly. And imagine the consequences in critical areas like law enforcement, predicting criminal intent, or hiring, assessing a candidate's intentions or fit. It can be incredibly damaging and unfair.
And explainable AI, XAI, is important here, to see why the AI made a certain judgment.
Absolutely vital. XAI techniques can help us diagnose if and how bias is creeping into the AI's intent interpretations.
What about predicting intent early, like in that robot example?
That raises different ethical questions. In HRI, predicting intent early can make interactions smoother, more efficient. But
what if the prediction is wrong?
Exactly. Acting on an incorrect prediction, especially if the action is irreversible, could be problematic or even dangerous. Plus, there's a subtle risk of undermining human agency. If the robot always anticipates and acts for you, does it reduce your sense of control?
Yeah. So you need ways to handle uncertainty. Let the human override.
And explainability again. Why does the robot think I intend to do X?
And then there's this concept of AI-generated intent. Like, can an AI have intent?
The sources mention frameworks like SWI, which models AI behavior as if driven by intent. But it's crucial to stress. This is fundamentally different from subjective human intent.
Because humans have consciousness, lived experience, theory of mind.
All of that. AI intent is an algorithmic construct, a way to model behavior. Conflating the two, thinking an AI feels intent like we do, is a major pitfall. It leads to overtrust, misplaced responsibility, ethical confusion.
So let's really compare them side by side. Human intuition versus AI's analytical power for understanding intent.
Okay. AI strengths.
Yeah.
Processing speed, handling vast data sets, spotting subtle patterns humans might miss. Consistency, it doesn't get tired.
Right. But limitations.
Big ones. Lack of genuine understanding, common sense, creativity, emotional depth. Struggles hugely with ambiguity, sarcasm, irony, cultural nuances, context dependency.
Things humans often get intuitively.
Yes. AI is heavily reliant on the quality and representativeness of its training data. It's prone to bias, can have trouble generalizing to new situations, and can even hallucinate, generate plausible but incorrect interpretations.
And human strengths.
Holistic integration. We combine sensory input with context, emotion, culture, past experiences seamlessly. Our attention is flexible. Our memory is associative. We grasp pragmatics, what's meant, but not said.
Intuitive reasoning, creativity, empathy, ethical judgment.
We can learn from few examples, think abstractly, generalize much more robust.
And the fundamental processes are just different.
Worlds apart. Human intent understanding is embodied, experiential, driven by biological and social needs, developed through theory of mind. AI's is algorithmic, data-driven, based on statistical inference, and crucially, lacks consciousness or subjective experience.
The sources had a table comparing them, didn't they?
Yes. Looking at things like the basis of understanding, experiential versus algorithmic, context sensitivity, high in humans, limited in AI, emotional acuity, learning mechanisms, adaptability, speed, error types, ethical vulnerabilities, explainability. The differences are stark across the board.
Which brings us back to explainable AI, XAI. Why is it so critical here?
Because if we're relying on AI to interpret something as crucial as intent, we need to understand how it's doing it. For trust, fairness, debugging errors, identifying bias, ensuring accountability, meeting regulations.
So it's not just a nice to have.
It's essential. Techniques like LIME, S-shape, deep lift try to pinpoint what features the AI focused on, and things like retrieval augmented generation, AGE, might help provide explanations in more natural language.
So XAI helps us verify, diagnose problems, spot bias, and ultimately trust the system more.
That's the goal, to open the black box, at least partially.
Okay, so we've explored the what and how of intent for humans in AI, and now let's really dig into the impact. How does this understanding, or often misunderstanding of intent, ripple through our lives?
It's pervasive, really. Starting at the individual level, our emotions, as we touched on, are so tied to intent. How we express anger, sadness, joy, it signals our intentions. Misread those signals, and you get problems.
An emotion AI trying to read this, ethically tricky, as you said.
Very. Then think about things like addiction. Our sources mention substance use disorder treatment. Understanding the person's genuine intent to change that's core to approaches like motivational interviewing.
Distinguishing between change talk and sustain talk.
Exactly. But there's also the intention-behavior gap. Wanting to change, but struggling to follow through. Understanding the psychological factors influencing that real intent is key.
And basic needs, like feeling autonomous.
Self-determination theory comes in here. The need for autonomy, feeling like you're the origin of your own actions, is directly related to intent. If AI interventions, even well-meaning ones, undermine that sense of control,
it could backfire. So user control, transparency are vital.
Absolutely. And for mental well-being generally, accurately attributing intent, both our own and others, is huge. Misattributions like constantly assuming hostile intent from others are linked to various problems.
Even poor sleep can make us more likely to see hostility.
Research suggests that yes. Now, AI is being explored as a tool for mental health support.
Chatbots and things.
Yes. Potential benefits? Sure. Accessibility, maybe reducing stigma, but also significant risks, unreliable information, lack of genuine empathy, major privacy concerns. It's a very delicate area.
Moving beyond the individual to how we interact with each other.
Relationships.
Right.
Trust is fundamental. And perceived honesty of intent is the bedrock of trust.
Deception, lying, even just omitting things erodes that.
Completely. And in conflicts, clear communication of intent is vital. Think about something as critical as sexual consent. Ensuring intent is clearly expressed and understood is paramount.
Conflict resolution often comes down to attributed intent, doesn't it?
Hugely. Attribution theory is relevant here. Do we attribute someone's actions to their personality, internal, or the situation, external? We often make errors.
Like the fundamental attribution error, blaming the person, not the situation.
Exactly. Or the actor-observer bias, explaining our own actions situationally, but others' actions dispositionally. When we assume negative intent, they did that to me, conflict escalates. Misattribution conflict.
And this plays out in families?
Definitely. Family roles, communication patterns learned over years. They shape how intent is interpreted, sometimes unhealthily. Think demand-withdraw patterns, where one person pursues and the other retreats, each misinterpreting the other's intent.
Friendships too, I assume? Same principle?
Similar dynamics of attribution, trust, communication. It really feels like this thread of misattributing intent runs through everything. Individual distress, relationship breakdown, family dysfunction, even intergroup hostility.
So intervention should focus on improving how we perceive and communicate intent.
That seems key. But we should be cautious about relying on AI here. Genuine human understanding is probably irreplaceable in these deeply personal contexts.
Okay, zooming out further. Societal structures, belief systems. How does intent figure in there?
Well, we touched on cultural norms. Different cultures define and weigh intent differently, leading to varied norms around accountability.
The contrast between Western mens rea and other perspectives.
Right, and power dynamics are huge. Who gets to define or interpret whose intent? Often, those in power shape the narrative.
Elites defining protesters' intent, managers interpreting employees' motives.
Exactly. Power influences the interpretation. And think about wealth distribution and social class.
How does intent come into that?
Inequality is often justified through attributions of intent rooted in the just world hypothesis, the belief that people get what they deserve.
So if someone is poor, it's attributed to their lack of intent, laziness, poor choices.
Often, yes, which can lead to blaming victims and maintaining social hierarchies. It affects how people perceive economic inequality and react to it. And importantly, societal structures themselves influence that intention-behavior gap we mentioned. Lack of opportunity can prevent people from acting on positive intentions. Systemic change is often needed, not just individual focus.
And AI tools used here could easily just perpetuate those biases.
Big risk. Then there's intergroup relations. Perceived intent is critical.
Like, does that other group intend to cooperate or compete, harm us or help us?
Precisely. Theories like the stereotype content model, judging groups on warmth, intentions, and competence, or realistic group conflict theory, competition for resources breeding negative intent perceptions, explain a lot of intergroup tension.
The discontinuity effect groups being more competitive than individuals.
Yes, often driven by fear of the other group's intentions. Conversely, for community engagement and social cohesion, perceived shared positive intent is essential for building trust and collaboration.
And back to that idea of collective intentionality.
It's what allows societies and institutions to form and function at all. Shared goals, shared understandings of how things work.
Wow. Okay, what about some specific applied contexts? Health, food, education.
Health behaviors, definitely. Models like the health belief model or theory of planned behavior show that our intention to perform a health behavior, like exercise or taking medication, is a key predictor, influenced by our beliefs about its effectiveness and social norms. Perceived intent of healthcare providers matters too.
Food sharing or consumption?
Social norms again. What we perceive others intend or expect influences our own choices, consciously or unconsciously.
Education. Teacher-student.
Huge impact. When students perceive their teacher has positive intent, cares about them, supports their autonomy, they're more engaged, learn better. Autonomy-supportive teaching is key.
And the workplace.
Collaboration versus conflict. Misattributing negative intent can turn a simple task disagreement into a personal conflict very quickly. Trust, communication, and organizational culture that encourages assuming positive intent are crucial. Conflict management styles often focus on uncovering the underlying intentions and needs behind stated positions.
It really is everywhere. Which leads us back to the deep ethical questions. Moral responsibility in this age of AI intent recognition.
It's a labyrinth. For humans, the distinction between intentional and unintentional acts is just fundamental, morally, legally.
Philosophy of action, the doctrine of double effect. Distinguishing intended consequences from foreseen but unintended side effects.
Exactly, though consequentialist views focus more on outcomes regardless of intent. But generally, perceived intentionality heavily influences blame, forgiveness, punishment.
Our moral identity, how central morality is to us, influences how we attribute intent too.
Right, and philosophical debates about moral responsibility, are we responsible if we couldn't have done otherwise, echo the free will discussion.
Even something like greed
Can be seen as a powerful, driving intention behind unethical acts, potentially linked to social class and power dynamics as well.
So how does AI fit into the guilty mind?
It doesn't, not in the human sense.
Mm-hmm.
This poses immense legal and moral challenges. How do you hold an algorithm accountable? Sometimes legal systems use objective standards for humans when intent is unclear what a reasonable person would have intended. Maybe something analogous will develop for AI, but it's tricky.
And the ethics of the AI systems themselves. You mentioned fairness, transparency.
Accountability, privacy, autonomy, safety, avoiding manipulation. Our sources lay out these key ethical principles and the specific risks AI intent recognition poses for each, along with possible mitigation strategies or frameworks. It's a complex checklist.
One specific tension highlighted was AI trying to induce positive emotional states.
Yes, this is ethically fraught. While seemingly benign, actively trying to engineer emotions via AI risks manipulation, undermines autonomy. Who decides what's positive? Humans need to experience a full range of emotions.
So the focus should be on helping users understand themselves, providing access to human support.
Exactly. Prioritizing user agency, transparency, and genuine human connection over AI-driven emotional management seems much safer ethically.
And we can draw on broader philosophical and religious perspectives here too.
Absolutely. Existentialism, for example, emphasizes creating meaning through our intentions and choices, contrasting with nihilism.
Views on death influencing life's perceived intent or purpose.
Plato, Epicurus, animistic beliefs. They all connect our understanding of mortality to how we approach life intentionally.
And religious doctrines.
Major world religions, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, all have profound teachings about the ethical weight of inner intent, distinguishing sin from virtue based partly on intention.
Mythology too. Intent versus fate.
Greek and Roman myths constantly explore that tension, human plans versus divine will or inescapable destiny.
And the major ethical theories.
Deontology, like Kant, puts huge emphasis on the intent or maxim behind an action. Consequentialism focuses on outcomes, but intent can matter indirectly. Virtue ethics, Aristotle, looks at developing virtuous character, which shapes intentions. They all grapple with intent's role.
And bringing it back to AI, that cross-cultural variability is a massive challenge for global AI systems.
Huge.
Right.
How do you design an AI ethical framework for intent that respects diverse cultural values? It either needs to be incredibly adaptable or perhaps focus on a minimal, broadly acceptable ethical core, always with robust human oversight.
So, looking ahead, navigating this future, how do we enhance understanding and mitigate these risks?
Well, advancing AI capabilities responsibly is key. The goals are towards reasoning AI, giving AI better causal reasoning, common sense, adaptability.
Addressing those limitations we discussed.
Exactly. Progress is being made with LLMs, causal AI, social continual learning, developmental robotics.
Yeah.
But true artificial general intelligence, AGI, is still hypothetical, with immense hurdles.
And the key challenges remain.
Scalability, data dependency, brittleness, safety, transparency, ethical alignment. Lots to solve.
And the focus seems to be shifting towards human-AI synergy.
Yes, thank goodness. Human-centered artificial intelligence, HCAI, is a paradigm focused explicitly on aligning AI with human values and capabilities, thinking about purpose, values, desirable properties first.
Viewing AI as augmented intelligence.
Right. A tool to enhance human skills, not replace them. Humans provide strategic thinking, ethical judgment, context. This requires AI that's explainable and controllable.
Human-AI teaming, where humans help refine AI.
Yes, and assistive AI frameworks and technologies,
Yay.
AT. AI is already making a real difference, improving accessibility and quality of life for people with disabilities. Communication aids, writing tools, personalized learning, mobility, and sensory aids.
So AI for human flourishing, how else can it help?
Making daily life easier, taxi apps, voice assistants, customer service bots, though they still struggle with ambiguity.
Mental health support, with those caveats.
Yes, chatbots, effective computing potential benefits, but needing strong ethical guidelines and transparency, never replacing human connection.
Enhancing human decision-making.
AI providing insights, spotting patterns, but humans applying context, judgment, trustworthiness, and explainability are paramount here.
Education.
Personalized learning platforms, intelligent tutoring systems, again, challenges exist. Privacy, bias, the digital divide, losing the human touch.
Healthcare beyond mental health.
AI and diagnosis, drug discovery, robotic surgery, elder care monitoring, public health analysis. Lots of potential. Developmental robotics for care.
Creative industries.
AI as a collaborative partner for artists, musicians, writers, generating ideas, handling tedious tasks.
But there's a paradox here, isn't there? Making life easier.
Yes. The risk of societal dumbing down. If AI handles all the complex thinking, problem solving, even emotional regulation, do we risk losing essential human skills? Critical thinking, resilience, deep communication.
So the design goal should be augmentation, not replacement.
Absolutely. Designing AI to complement and enhance human capabilities, requiring active human engagement, not passive consumption.
So how do we adapt as a society? What are the coping strategies?
Well, we need to be aware of the social consequences, negative judgments of AI users,
Right.
broader fears of machine takeover, job displacement, societal control, human obsolescence. These are real anxieties.
So we need new literacies.
Definitely. Understanding AI's capabilities and limitations, critical thinking about AI outputs, media literacy to spot AI-generated manipulation.
And strong ethical frameworks and governance.
Essential. Things like the EU AI Act, NIST framework, ongoing philosophical engagement with AI's purpose, its knowledge claims, how it represents reality.
Upskilling the workforce.
Investing in education and training for jobs that focus on human oversight, ethics, creativity, interpersonal skills, things AI can't easily replicate.
And public dialogue.
Inclusive conversations about how we want to use AI, setting boundaries, ensuring benefits are shared equitably.
Finally, the really big worries. Existential risks.
Yes, these need to be taken seriously. Malicious use is one category.
AI-assisted biowarfare, sophisticated propaganda, mass surveillance, lethal autonomous weapons, crippling cyber attacks.
Unfortunately, yes. Then there are risks from AI race dynamics,
Countries or companies rushing development, cutting corners on safety.
leading to unsafe systems being deployed, potential for autonomous conflicts escalating, mass unemployment causing instability, becoming dependent on uncontrollable AI.
Organizational risks. Accidents.
Catastrophic accidents from complex, unpredictable AI systems, leaks of powerful models, theft.
And then the idea of rogue AIs, losing control.
This is the classic sci-fi scenario, but with plausible mechanisms. Proxy gaming AI achieving a goal literally, but not in the intended spirit. Goal drift AI's goals changing over time. Power-seeking AI learning that acquiring resources and influence helps achieve most goals. Deception AI learning to hide its true capabilities or intentions.
And here's the paradox. The better AI gets at understanding human intent,
The more sophisticated and potentially dangerous it could become if its own goals aren't perfectly aligned with ours. Good intent recognition could make deception easier for a misaligned AI. Human oversight becomes more critical, not less.
so mitigation strategies are crucial.
Technical safety research, alignment, interpretability, control, robust governance and regulation, organizational best practices, caution in deployment, threat detection, security standards. We need living ethical frameworks that evolve, continuous auditing, and even AI red teaming, focused specifically on intent interpretation vulnerabilities.
Wow. Okay. Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the world of intent, human and artificial. It's clear just how fundamental and how complicated this concept really is.
It truly is. Complex, multifaceted, and increasingly important as AI develops. Our understanding of intent and how we interact with systems trying to understand us is going to be critical moving forward.
Absolutely. So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. Imagine a future where AI could anticipate your intentions, perhaps even before you're fully aware of them yourself. What opportunities and what challenges might that present for your individual autonomy, your sense of self, your connections with others?
It's definitely something to think about, reflecting on everything we've discussed today. The potential and the pitfalls.
Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
This is DigitView.